Good morning, gentlemen. All right, welcome to another Thursday Bloodhound Workshop. Well, I do see a lot of regulars in the room, a lot of regular names, and I did see at least two new names in the room here. Actually, maybe three. Actually, make that four. All right, it looks like we still get people joining us. So some new people, some new names I don't recognize off the top of my head here. So before we get started, well, I guess first, if anybody has a Bloodhound question for me, go ahead and queue it up and get it into the Q&A window there for me. And and while you're doing that, let me ask for the new people, or I think there's new people in the room here. My question is, would you like to hear the workshop introduction for any of the new people here in the room today? So the workshop introduction is, I'll explain what we do in this workshop and what we do not do in this workshop. I'll explain how the recordings work. So if you do ask a question, that way you'll know how soon you can get a recording and a workaround as well, so you don't have to wait for the video to be edited, right? So for example here, right, I'm on the training workshops page, and right, just go to support, and it's the second one on the menu here, second one down. And if you go to the bottom of the page, right, there's a list of workshop videos, and you'll always notice that there is a delay because we do have a video editor that takes the time to clean up the videos as best as possible, shorten them up, reduce the time, things of that nature. So that's very time consuming, and it takes several weeks to sometimes a couple months. So so anyways, I don't want to get too much into it if nobody wants to hear that. And then the last thing, the third thing, is I'll explain the indicators here that I can install in my machine if you have a question about using a specific indicator with Bloodhound. All right, so those are the three topics I'll explain during the workshop introduction. If anybody would like to hear that, just let me know. All right. Okay, so while I am waiting on that, looks like a couple of questions already popped in here. Let's see here. So Renato's asking about the VPS that we've partnered with. So monthly payment. Do they come with already preset systems on? No, we do not. No, actually, maybe. Actually, I don't know. I'm not the salesperson, so you're really asking the wrong person there, Renato. I'm sorry. I kind of know the general topics of questions like that. But I often don't know the details. So now that's unfortunately that's something you would have to email into support. And I think there is a good chance that that some of the questions, some of the Bloodhound files that you see listed right from these workshops might actually be included now on the VPSs. So, but I don't know for sure. You have to email. You can email support. Email sales at support. Sales at Shark Indicators. If you can't already tell, guys, hopefully I'm getting over a cold. So it was pretty close. I almost canceled the workshop, but I figured I can get through it a little bit. At least I should be able to get some questions answered. So we'll see how long my throat and my chest will hold out. So, yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I might be a little, I might be a little distracted here with my speech. So, all right. So there we go. So there's Renato's question out of the way, and let's see. Let's see here. All right, Jerry's got a real quick one. Even though Jerry's is last, Jerry's is asking, does it work on Heikin Ashi chart? Absolutely. Indicators don't care what chart type it is, right? Because a candlestick is just 4 pieces of price data, right? It's just all numbers, right? It's the open price, the open, high, low, and close price. And all chart types have open, high, low, and close prices. So, yeah. So there's, again, I don't know where this fallacy came from that some indicators don't work on some charts. Maybe there was a small handful of indicators where the developer deliberately disabled the indicator from functioning on certain chart types. But that's an extremely rare case in my experience. So, yeah, because all Bloodhound does, actually Bloodhound doesn't even, hold on, I better correct myself here. The indicators that you're using need to function on the chart, because Bloodhound doesn't calculate the indicators calculate themselves, right? Or NinjaTrader calculates the indicators. And then Bloodhound just receives the price value from NinjaTrader of whatever your indicator is. So, the only part of the chart that Bloodhound looks at is, with some of the solvers. Let's see here. Let's pull up the comparison solver here. Right, this is the big workhorse. So you can set it to price, and of course, if your input type is going to be, the price of the bars, then you do have all those prices, and every chart type has all those prices there. So, yeah. So there you go. I went a little above and beyond there to answer your question there, Jerry. All right. So there's Jerry's question. All right. Okay. So let me get back to the top here. Mark has the first question coming in here. So, all right, so Mark is asking, how do you do a pullback plus or with a continuation? So, for example, price pulls back to some moving average, the EMA 20, and then continues on with the trend. So, the key point there, Mark, is what is your definition of continuation, right? Continuation can mean anything. So if you could narrow that down for me, then we can discuss the generic the generalized topic of doing pullbacks or defining a pullback. I guess the proper way to define it is defining a pullback in Bloodhound here. Then there's also, I guess this is a second question. Do you find lizard indicators are very beneficial? I don't know. A lot of people use them. They've been around for a decade plus. Harry has been putting up his indicators on big mics for a very, very long time, a decade plus. So, and everybody loved those indicators up on big mics. I think that's what helped big mics, get as big as it was all the free work that Harry was doing, for Big Mike and not getting paid for it. And so now he's not doing that for Mike anymore. He's doing it under his own name now, Lizard Indicators. So again, I don't give we don't give advice on like what indicators are good and what indicators are not. So, but I can say I do get asked quite a lot of questions that involve using their various indicators. So from that standpoint, I would say yes. That would be a yes. So, okay, so let me put that question away. Let's see here. All right. Okay, so before we get started with Mark's question here, let me just give some feedback here from Yuxel. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. Yuxel is asking, he uses the lizard swing trend indicator. I'm not familiar with that one, but I know what a swing trend indicator is. Could I give some examples on how to use the major minor trend in combination? Sorry, no, that's not something I do in this workshop. I don't give ideas. So if you tell me exactly what you're looking for with that indicator, what you want from that indicator on a Renko chart, then I can show you how to take that condition that you're looking for. Yeah, I can. If you provide the condition that you're looking for with that indicator on the Renko chart, what the situation is that you're looking for, then I can show you how to convert that into Bloodhound. Right? That's what I do in this workshop here. So I don't answer generic questions like that because it means I have to interpret. I have to provide some kind of concept of trading, and we're not trading coaches, so we don't do that in this workshop here. So yeah, so all right, so if you could just kind of define what exactly you're wanting to do with that indicator and on the Renko charts, and then I'll get back to your question. All right, so circling back around here to Mark's question. All right, so defining or building a pullback with a continuation of the trend. Yeah, bounce off and continues trend. What exactly does continue trend mean? All right, actually, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to say one bar in the direction of the trend is a continuation. All right. Yeah, we'll just narrow it down to that. Let's see here. Okay. So let's get, all right, give me a moment here to get the chart set up, and then we'll get to work. All right. So the question is, how do you define a pullback and a bounce off? Like, look at that. The market is working with us today. Look at that. A perfect bounce off of a moving average there, right? So instead of using the 20 EMA, I figured that would just be a little too fast, too would hug price a little too tight and make it just a little difficult. Yeah, just make it a little more difficult here. So I'm using a 30 period EMA instead of a 20 there. And yeah, so we get this nice pullback and a bounce off. So we'll work right here. And we even have a couple of other spots, looky here. Man, looks like the 30 EMA is working well today. Imagine that. Yeah, another spot right there. There's places all over where, look at that. Nice little bounce off the 30. So actually, I'll work right here. All right. So, right, price movement, price action is a tricky and difficult thing to define mathematically. But when you are looking for these price action movements here, you do have to somehow, right, figure out what are the mathematics involved here. What are the definitions here? And so one of them is, you need price to move a certain distance away, right? Because otherwise, would you call that? I mean, the computer would say, oh yeah, price moved away, and then it bounced right off, right? So computers, right, obviously they're not smart, so you have to put a little more, you have to give it some constraints, right? Some defined details there, right? So one of them is, how far away do you need price to move away before you consider it a pullback? Right, so here we go. We got a nice distance here. Looks like, it's a couple of ATRs. And yeah, so I'm going to go with ATR. So that way we can factor in market volatility for the day as well. Right, but maybe you're just looking for a fixed number of ticks, right? Obviously that works too. And then you got to figure out, well, when we're measuring, this separation here, is it from the top of the bar, right? From the part of the bar that's closest, or do you want to just go purely by the closing price? These are all subjective decisions you have to make up for yourself here. So, and then the next part is, well, is one bar good enough to have that separation, or do you want multiple bars? Do you want there to be a good, a good number of bars involved here, versus, let's see if I can find something here. Versus something like this, is 3 bars really enough, or, do you want more, right? So you have to kind of figure all that out. What makes a good trend run away from your moving average and then a pullback to it, right? And then also, how long does the market have to move back, right? Is the market, see if I can find a good example. Yeah, probably. Well, this is kind of an example here, right? Sometimes the market just dilly-dallies, and and would you really call that, say, like a pullback, if it actually did eventually kind of pop up here, and let's say the next couple of bars did actually go up and it bounced off. Is that really a pullback, or is that a dilly-dallying around, right? So you gotta kind of define that in as well. So, all right, so there's 3 metrics there, 3 basic metrics. there to think about. And you might include even more metrics, right, to better define, what's a pullback for the computer to understand what you're looking for, right? So I'm going to go with those three metrics there. So, right, all right. So we got this, this separation. We have, right, number of bars, and also, number of bars. So something like that, right? So I'm going to include those three metrics there. All right. Okay. Let's see here. All right. First thing, let's create today's workshop file name here. And it is the 18th already. All right, so I will be muting my microphone from time to time so I can cough and maybe sneeze once in a while. And like I said earlier, we'll see how long my throat and my chest can hold out. All right, so we're defining a pullback to a moving average. All right, so the easiest part, I always like to start with the easy parts first, right? So there is no real order in doing anything. You just kind of find whatever kind of condition is easiest for you, and just build the solver. Just get yourself started, right? And then working out how all the connections go together and everything, that will begin to kind of flow together after you've at least built several solvers, to do some easy functions there. So first one, let's measure our separation here. All right, so to do that, that would be the comparison solver. So we're comparing, right, the EMA to the top of the bars. All right, let's connect that up, and let's go back to the logic tab here. Then I'll zoom in a little bit there. All right, so input A is going to be, let's see, what do we want that to be? Well, I guess usually it's price. Yeah, I'll go with price. Doesn't ultimately matter. So, but trying to figure out which one is usually above here, right? So this is going to be a short signal here, right? Ultimately, we're looking, this is a short bounce, right? So we're ultimately looking for a short signal. So if we reverse this, right, the market's going to be on top. And so with the comparison solver, right, the way the comparison rules are defaulted, let's open this up. Right, the way these rules are defaulted is input A, when it's on top of input B, right, it's already set with the greater than to give you a proper long signal there. So, so if you do reverse things, it's okay, because you can always go in here and reverse your conditions and you're good to go. So, all right. So, and the next thing here, so for a long, well, I'm looking at a short here. So for a short, I want to compare the body, or the, actually that's the body. Okay, so the high price Now we want to go from the high price up to the EMA. So if it's for a long, it's going to be the opposite, right? It's going to be the opposite side of the candle. So this will be a low price. All right, and our moving average today is the EMA 30. Oh, let's get the EMA in there. And all right, there's our EMA, and I'm going with a 30 period. There we go. And there we have it, right? So we can see whenever the highs are below, right? Highs are below, we're getting a short. And if the lows ever go above, then we get a long. Yeah, there we go. So the lows are above, we're getting a long. So, and so now let's put in what this minimum separation needs to be here. So that's, go back to the rules window. And let's see, yeah, I'll leave it in points here, especially since I'm on the NQ. And let's see what 20 points looks like. Hit apply. You know, so that's 20 points. I don't know, does that look like a far enough away? Yeah. We can always, remember, you can always go and adjust this. So this is the subjective part here. So 25, actually, wow. Yeah, I mean, this is the NQ, so the market can move pretty far, pretty fast. And, all right, you know what? 30 might be a little too far. I'll just go back to 25. All right, I just want to make this work here. So, all right, so that's the subjective part there. You know, what bar price do you want to use? You know, I'm using the top and the bottom of the bar, or maybe just you want to use the closing price. That's good enough, right? So, okay, so let's see, what is this? Let's give this a name. All right, so this is identifying when the lower high is 25 points away from the EMA 30. All right, that's one aspect done. So now that we have this, now we can start counting. Open that up a little bit. How many bars minimum do we want? So I'm just going to go with 4, something small, you know. But if you want a really nice kind of a nice extension away, you know, before the pullback, then you might want 5 or 6 or 7 bars, right? Again, that's a subjective part of defining what a pullback is, so you'll have to figure that out. All right, and so counting bars, we're going to use the signal counter there. All right, so the signal counter basically counts, you know, all of these signals. You know, they're not trace signals, they're just signals coming out of this solver here. And so we can use the signal counter to identify. Let's click back on the signal counter here. So we want at least, I want at least 4. All right. And so the counting up to, that sets what the minimum number of bars that you need with this separation here. You know, right? Maybe you only want to need 2. You know, again, this is all personal, subjective, you know, stuff here. I'm going to go with 4 because that's what I'm working with in front of me. And then there's a look back period. So maybe you're like, okay, I need at least 4 bars out of 6, out of the last 6. So that way you give it some variance, right? Where one of these bars in the middle can pop up a little bit, right? And is less than the 25 points we're looking for, right? But then the other bars afterwards will count up to 4. So that way you get 4 out of the last 6, right? So again, this is a subjective part here. So, I'm going to go with this. So, so that's it for the signal counter. So this is going to make sure we have at least 4 bars with this minimum separation here, with within the last, X number of bars looking back. All right, so I'm just going to go with 6 here. And there we have it. So we have, this element, the separation element, and we have the number of bars element in there, right? And next, we now need to figure out, okay, how many bars are we going to give the market to actually pull back, right, before everything just kind of flattens out together, in case, because if the market goes sideways, right, eventually your moving average is going to come back and touch it. And of course, the computer's going to go, oh, there's my touch, and we got to bounce, right? So, so the next part, right, is we take these signals and then we need to extend them forward, a few more bars, right, until the market actually touches the EMA, or your moving average there. Right. So let's actually, instead of doing that, let's build the solver that identifies the touching part, right? So we're going to need another comparison solver. Right. There we go. So to identify when the bar touches the EMA. So connect that in. All right, so input A is again going to be price. And I'm going to go, for the long, I'm going to go high. And for short, I'm going to go low. And for input B, that's going to be our EMA again. And where's our EMA? All right, there's our EMA, and adjust it to a 30 period, like so. And what we're interested in, right, is you're always going to have some output, right? We're always going to have some kind of output. But if you notice, every once in a while, we get a bar with a long and a short. And if you look, that's a bar that's touching. Right, so that bar looks like it might be touching, but it's not, because it only has a short. This bar is clearly touching, right, and it has a long and a short. And we have a bunch of bars over here, right? Obviously, yeah, these bars are just kind of consolidating on the EMA, like price usually does once in a while, right? So what are we interested over here? There we go. These 2 bars here are touching. That's what we're looking for. All right. So we want to isolate the bars that have a long and a short together. So to do that, we need a function node, the long short modifier. And with the long short modifier, there's several modes that'll give us what we want, right? We can set it to minimum. And there we go, right? All the others are stripped away, right? And that's simply because one side, the minimum value is 0. So if you're looking for the minimum value, well, if any of the bars don't have both the long and the short out of 1, then the minimum value is going to be 0, right? We could also do, what's the other one? Product. You could do multiply. And anyways, let's just keep it simple. Let's just go with minimum, right? Easy to understand. And then I always like to name it, name the solver, or yeah, name this function node, whatever mode it's set to there, so I know what it's doing. Right, there we go. So there's all the bars that are touching. All right, so taking a step back to where we were before, right? So we have our pullback identified, but now we need to get these signals extended forward in time to the touch, right? So we need to extend those signals to these signals, right? There. Here, and I can just move this, right? Extend these over to here, right? And so to do that, we're going to use another function node, the signal extender. Imagine that. Let's connect that in. And let's see here. It defaults to extending for 5 bars. And we can see here it didn't quite get there. It wasn't quite enough. At least, for this example here. So let's just bump it up by an extra 2. Call it good. Right? And there we go. So now we have an overlap, right, of the touch bars and, the pullback being identified there. And also, there. And it's always good to, kind of put a name in there that tells you exactly what these function nodes are doing. So, there. All right, so now we can connect these together with an AND node, right? So again, right, this is the pullback detection, and then we combine that with the bars touching detection, and we have a signal. There we go. Now, the last part here is Mark made sure to include that we want to identify a continuation, right? So that means we need a bar, going in the opposite direction, right? So in this case, a down bar. Right? So that means that we need to extend this at least one more bar, right? Even though this example has 2 short signals, right? It very well could have ended right here on this bar, right? It could have ended on the bar that touched. And this bar may not have touched, right? Obviously, the down bar is not always going to touch. So you got to imagine that our down bar may not be a touching bar, and so in which case there wouldn't be a signal there. So for that reason, right, I'm going to use a look back this time. I could use a signal extender if I wanted to, but I'm going to use a look back. No particular reason. And what I'm using is the displacement here. So the displacement, right, if you've ever, paid attention to NinjaTrader's indicator window here, let's open this up. Right, every indicator in NinjaTrader has, where is it? This displacement right here, right? And it just shifts everything forward in time, right? So that's what this displacement's doing, is it's taking the signals and just shifting them forward in time by however many bars here. And so I'm just going to go 1. And if we do that, right, there we go. Boom, shifted it forward. And now we need a bar direction. So this bar direction is what's going to identify the down bar for us, right? Because obviously, right, the bar, this bar, it's an up bar, and there's no short output. So there'd be no signal. And so now we need one more AND node to connect those together. And there we have it. So there's our signal. So, right. Now, one thing to note here is, let's see. Normally that's how I do it, but you know what? Let's say you wanted at least 2 down bars. Then the look back actually wouldn't be a good choice here. So let's replace that with the signal extender, right? And this time, so if you wanted 2 down bars to confirm the continuation part, right, of the question, then we're going to set our signal extender to 2. Right. So let's knock this down to 2, like so. Let me take a look at it. And so, yeah, okay, let's connect up our AND node. And then with the bar direction, right, if you need 2 down bars, then we need to set the number of bars for our bar direction to 2, like so, right? And there we have it. And so sometimes you might have an extra signal or 2, right? And that's coming all the way back here, right? This part of the logic, right? Remember that this part of the logic here is determining the minimum number of bars that price has before it can touch, right? But sometimes price will touch sooner. So yeah, if you remember when I was setting up this signal extender, right, we had already counted for this specific case, it only needed 5 bars, and I deliberately added 2 extra bars because sometimes the market might take a little longer, right? And so because I added 2 extra bars, well, we added an extra signal. So, right, and if the market pulled back, even faster, and then had even more down bars, then we'd have more signals in a row, right? It all just depends on the exact market behavior there. So to solve this, the extra number of signals, now we can just put in a signal blocker, right? Like so. And I think in our case here, 5 is probably good enough. Yeah, if we do some math here, and I'll explain the math of how I came to 5 being good enough. Is right, we have, so from the pullback detection, we're extending that pullback out by 7 bars, right? But the market sometimes might just take 1 bar, boom, it just instantly pulls back and 1 bar hits it and then bounces off, right? So if that happens, then with our 2 bar requirement here, right, we need 2 down bars, so 7 minus 2 is 5. So I think in theory, we should only get a possible maximum of 5 continuous signals, or well, 5 signals after the pullback. Sorry, they may not all be continuous, right? Because you could get 1 up bar And then the next one could be a down bar, and that one would have a signal on it as well. So, right. But, again, all these numbers here all need to be tested, and that's what we're going to do actually right now. So, although what I'm going to do, I'm going to just set this back to just a 1 bar continuation here. That is what I usually get requested the most. There. 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 Change those names. And all right. So now it's time to go test this out. And let's see here. All right. So yeah, it looks like we have a couple of wicks here. Yeah, we got 3 wicks here that kind of violated this pullback here, right? So again, right, those are the things you got to figure out if you want to use the closing price, because definitely these closing prices are far enough away, right? But the wicks aren't. So yeah, so that didn't work out. And yeah, that didn't work out. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here we go. So we definitely had a big enough, yeah, these 4 bars here, looks like that met that, this one here met the 30 point separation and pulled back, and boom, there's our first bar there. So, oh, and also, you know what, that gave us a good example there where you might want to make sure, right, that your continuation bar closes on the correct side of the moving average. Maybe, maybe not, right? All depends on exactly what you're looking for there. But let's just go ahead and throw that into the mix. Right, so let's make sure that, yeah, our continuation bar closes on the correct side of the market. So to do that, let's zoom in again. We're going to add another AND node, like so, and add another comparison solver. So let's see here. So we're just comparing the closing price to the EMA 30. There, let's connect that in. All right, so let's go set this up. All right, so input A is going to be price, and we're just make sure the closing price is on the right side of the market. Input B, that'll be our EMA once again. Here we go, 30 period. And there we have it. So, and also, if you wanted to, you could even say, all right, you know what, I want to make sure that that closing price is, a point or two, above or below the moving average if you want. So I put 1 point in, still managed there. So again, right, all that is subjective there. And there we have it. Let's see here. All right, so I'm going to go and name these AND nodes here. So this is, actually, let's pull this out, right? So this AND node is identifying the pullback and the touch. I'll just call it the touch, right? Because remember, this part down here is the touch, and this here is measuring the pullback, right? and the width of the pullback. There. And then this is the continuation. There. Keep that short. There. Just keep it short. All right, so let's continue searching through here. See what we get. See if we get any more. Yeah. So we can see, what was built here right now looks to be a little restrictive. It seems like maybe that separation might be a little too much. So again, right, those are all things you can fiddle with there, right? So if we wanted to, say, get this to work out, right, we can go in here and let's play around with the separation. Yeah, it looks like we will get at least 4 bars. So let's open up, right? So remember, this is the one that determines the separation there, right? 25 points. There. And let's try 20. And nope. 15. And nope. Well, and let me adjust the signal counter as well. Knock this down to maybe 3. 2. Okay, looks like that is a lot shorter than expected. Oh, yeah. All right. That's only like 6.5 points. Okay, no wonder. Yeah, that's only like 6.5 points. So, again, yeah, so you'll have to figure out, how small these pullbacks are, that are acceptable to you. So, and there we go. Right, and here's another example of why, we added that last solver back here, making sure that the bar closed on the correct side of the market, but this doesn't have a distance requirement, right? So that technically qualified, but who knows, if we had a stronger close on the other side, it might filter out that stuff. But right, that stuff that you guys would kind of have to work out there and figure those details out there. And so here we go. Here's like a perfect case scenario there. Another one, bing bing. Another one. Well, kind of subjective, right? All right, so there we have it. So let me put everything back to the way it was, to the way it was built. There. Oops. there. Yeah, one other minor note here. So you remember there was another long signal here. Let's see. Yeah, I think that might have been the long signal right there. Right? There was another one here somewhere. Pretty sure it was that long wick right there. Right? And the reason why that was there was because, because in adjusting the signal counter here, knocking it down to only needing 2, what that would have done is it would have taken the signals coming out of the signal counter and they would have lasted longer. So, right, so basically the signal extender would have been taking, right, this run up, right, this pullback, this run up, and extended it further out, right, much further out. Let's see here. Let's actually connect that in. Yeah, see, look at that. It's going way out there. And after I adjusted, I think, the signal counter, it probably ran out, of 2 more extra bars beforehand. So that's what allowed this to get through. And so what that means was that, so the reason why that happened was the signal blocker was not adjusted to account for that, right? So just remember, if you're adjusting, right, adjusting the market move, all right, the separation, if you're adjusting the separation here, be mindful of how far out these signals might go. And based on that, you also need to increase the signal blocker as well. Right? So that's why we had that extra signals. I didn't increase the signal blocker to account for the flexibility that I allowed, in the separation there. All right, let's put that back. So, all right, so let me see if there's any follow-ups on this. Let's see, Mark. All right, no, I don't see any follow-up questions on this. Mark says thank you, so I take it that means he has what he needed. All right, or has what he needs. Okay, good deal. All right. And all right, then I guess, we'll put that question to rest. And take that off the board. And let's see here. All right, looks like Paul is up next here. Paul, Paul has the same question as Mark did, this pullback, but he wants to allow for a two-legged pullback. So Paul, I don't know what a two-legged pullback is. That's a new one on me. Let me see if you've defined it here. Oh, here we go. Great. Okay. All right, so just give me a moment here. I'm just reading all of Paul's comments here. Yeah, looks like, or it feels like my throat, my chest is not going to hold out for an entire workshop here. So I'm going to try and get through all these questions as quickly as I can here. All right, so let's add Paul's requirement here of a two bar. I'm going to redefine it instead of calling it a two-legged pullback, a two bar continuation, because that's the definition I'm reading here. So let's see here. Paul would like, let me find it again. All right, so following the pullback, the next candle, the next candle needs to break the high of the previous candle. The high has to break above the high of the candle that touches the moving average. Yeah, okay. So we can add that in here as well. So all we gotta do is zoom in here. All right, so let's go back and let's see. All right, so yeah, thankfully we have a good example to work with. So the touching bar is also the up bar, right? So maybe let's put in a correction for that. So let's say the touching bar doesn't count as the continuation bar there, right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't there. So let's restrict this so that the touching bar cannot be the continuation bar as well. So let's see here. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, it's a good thing I named these. So this is a continuation, And so back here is the pullback and touch, right? So there's the pullback and touch. So to make sure that the touch bar isn't included as the continuation bar, what we're going to do is pull that away, and we're going to insert in between a look back. And the look back, this time we are using the displacement there. So, right, and so if we look at it now, bingo. So we moved the signals off of the touch bar. So now that means the touch bar cannot be considered as a continuation there, right? So now we'll feed that into the system there. Let's see here. All right. I really don't like long names here in the solvers. Kind of stretches them out like a limousine a little too much, but you know, hey, these are for training purposes. So there we go. All right. So there is, right, so there's our look back node where the displacement prevents the touch bar, as being considered the continuation bar there. So unless technically it's not quite true, because what if both of these bars touched? Really it only prevents the first bar touching from being considered, but the second bar that touches can be considered, right? Which I would imagine anybody's fine with that. Anybody would be fine if both of these up bars touched, but maybe not the first up bar touching. So, all right. And again, if you are fine with this, the touching bar being the continuation bar, then again, all you gotta do is just pull this guy out of there, pull that guy out of the loop, and you're good to go. But we'll leave it in that for now, for the sake of answering Paul's question here. All right, so we removed the touching bar. So now we got to make sure that this continuation bar, that the high is higher than the touching bar's high, right? Or, well, basically the previous bar's high. And so let's connect that in. All right, so just wanted to make sure that our signal counter, was still blocking for enough bars. Yeah, we're good to go there. Let's see here. So now I need to add another comparison, right? Because basically, to put this two-leg pullback, I'm gonna just call it a strong continuation bar, something like that, to simply put that condition, to simply re-speak that condition, right? We just want to make the highs higher than the previous bar's high, right? Or the lows lower than the previous bar's high. That's all we're simply doing. So input A is going to be price. Input B is going to be price, right? So for a long, we want to make sure that the highs, right? We're comparing both high prices, right? So input A will be the current bar's high. Input B will be one bar back, right? So it'll be the bar that's touching. So that's going to have a look back of 2. And we're going to leave this on single value. And so look, there we go. Right, so obviously this high is not higher than that one, so there's no output. This high is higher, that high is higher, that high is higher, and that high is higher. So as long as all the highs are higher, then we get a long output. And right, and at the same time, oh no, I didn't quite do that, did I? No. All right, so for the shorts, it's going to be the low price. So let's plug in the low prices there. Get that included. There we go. Right, and so as the lows step lower, there we go. We're getting a short output. Right, the low went lower. So now that we have that, let's see if we're actually going to filter anything out. Oh, yeah, we'll get rid of this one here. Yeah, this one we'll get rid of. Connect that in, and there we go. So we got rid of that one. All right. So, all right, let's see. What should we call this? For the lack of a better term, I'm going to end up calling it just a strong continuation bar. There. There we have it. And all right, so let me just see if anybody has any follow-ups on this addition that we added here before I move on to the next question. Let's see here. Yeah, you know what? That's right. I did have a little comment on one of Paul's detailed, explanations here. Where Paul said he already has the slope of the moving average defined there, yeah, to determine the trend direction. Yeah, well, yeah, one thing I do recall in answering these questions in the past is that, depending on how you define this, sometimes that EMA can actually flatten out by the time it's freaking bizarre. But yeah, so just be mindful of that EMA might actually flatten out. And like, yeah, that EMA looked like it was really close to possibly reversing. So yeah, just something to be aware of there, Paul. So something I've seen in older workshops where I've answered this similar question. Okay. So that's why I don't. Actually, I may have used the slope solver in the past. Obviously, yeah, that's just instinctive to use the slope solver to define, the signal direction. But yeah, as you can see, it's not necessary, and I haven't used it for a very long time. So let's see here. Let me continue looking through the Q&A window here. Hmm. All right. So I see Paul here has added, yeah, a two-legged four back too small, is too small. Two small swings in the direction of the EMA, then at the continuation. Hmm. All right. Well, yeah, if what you were asking for was far more complex in defining the pullback, um, yeah, I guess I I think I might be imagining what you're explaining, but I'm not positive. So, Paul, since I haven't seen a two-legged pullback before, if I haven't done it properly, then why don't you email in a screenshot so that I can actually see exactly what you're talking about, right? And so for everybody else in the room, this is kind of the reason why I always remind everybody you can email your questions in ahead of time, because um, charting concepts, price action, it's all over the board. But seeing a screenshot of a chart, as they say, a picture is 1,000 words. Yeah, so so when you're trying to kind of explain or pose a question to me, with I guess if you could consider it unusual, kind of price behavior, price action, whatever, unusual situation, then it's always best to email in a screenshot of the chart, with, in this case, it would need to have a swing indicator on it so I can see the zigzags that you're talking about. And that way you can point out the two legs. You could use, like there's just a little arrow in here, say, leg one, leg two, blah, 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 and point things out. So I know exactly what your definitions are there. Yeah, so if I didn't do this right, Paul, then yeah, once you email in a screenshot, with the zigzag indicator on it, so I can see the two legs that you're talking about, during the of the pullback to the EMA, right? Or maybe it's two zigzags pulling away from the EMA, as well, um, and then I can get your question answered properly next week, because this part will be the same, right? Well, actually, maybe not. You know what? Actually, I think the whole thing. Actually, I think this part will be completely different. This part here might be the same because this is the after the touch, right? All of this is after the touch. This part here is the touch. Is pre-touch. Yeah, this is before the bar touches the EMA. So this will all change radically if you're talking about inserting zigzags, before the touch. So, and as for today, I don't think I'm going to survive long enough to be able to answer that more complicated version of this. So, okay. Yeah, there we go. I just read Paul's last explanation there. Um, all right. Yeah. So, Paul, I'm gonna ask to reserve this for next week, and please email in a screenshot there. That uh, to that way make sure I have it solidified in my head there. All right. But and also include, like, what is your definition of small swings? Small swings, that's subjective. You got to nail that down with some numbers. Like, what is the distance between those swings? What's the maximum distance between those swings? So, yeah. So, yeah, provide me some details like that too. And it sounds like you're also probably working with a slower moving EMA, maybe even an SMA to account for stuff like that. And maybe on the daily bars, I don't know if this will work on a minute chart. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But yeah, it sounds like I'll need some more details to find, to be able to produce that pattern on a chart there. So, let's see. All right. So, as mentioned before, my throat is kind of giving out on me. Hold on a moment. Okay, so let me try and get some questions answered here as quickly as I can here. I'm gonna instead of going in order, I'm gonna go by the easiest first. So Farouk, let's see, is Farouk here? Yeah, no. Farouk left. All right. Well, Farouk asked, when is the recordings will be uploaded? It depends on how busy the video editor is. We don't know. So, yeah. Let's see here. Kate Mark is asking, is it possible to name a whole group of solvers? No. Sorry. Bloodhound's not a word processor, so it doesn't have that kind of like Excel spreadsheet, Word, Microsoft Word functionality built into it, dude. I mean, that's a whole nother level of programming, that you have to build into the interface. So no, you just have to kind of, I don't know, make up your own little naming convention and whatever. You can just do something like that. A's, inside of a parentheses, right? Or whatever. Something like that. Whatever you like. Something like that. So, but you can use the, drawing tool, and my head's a little cloudy right now. All right, where's the drawing tool? Add text. Nope. Oh yeah, sorry. It's not a drawing tool. It's add text. There we go. So the add text. Boom. And with that, let's click on. There we go. So you got to click off of it, and then click back on it once you've drawn it, and then you can adjust it and whatnot. And right, and you can give it an outline color and give it some text, right? So this is, right, there you go. So you can just do something like that if that's maybe what you mean, right? Of course, you can control the size of that text if you want, right? Right here's the size of it, and everything. And even throw a background on there. There you go. Man. All right. That's a little too bright. Yeah. Oh, let's see here. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, let me just undo it. There we go. So there you go. You can just add text and surround the ones that you want and put a little note like that. There you go, right? So there's two ways to name a group of solvers there. Okay. And all right, so we got that one out of the way. All right, see what Jerry has next. Yeah, so Jerry's asking, since the calculation of the Heikin-Ashi open price differs from that of a regular candle, so does the closing price. How does Bloodhound handle that? Bloodhound is not supposed to handle it. So it depends. So, Jerry, are we talking about that actual bar type here? Right? Are we talking about the actual Heikin-Ashi bar type? Or are you talking about an indicator overlay? Right? So NinjaTrader has this built in right there, right? So if you use the built-in Heikin-Ashi candle, well, guess what? The open price is the open price. It's not different than the regular candle. I mean, the Heikin is the candle. So you're deliberately hiding the real price from your indicators. So Bloodhound uses the price values that NinjaTrader feeds it. All right. So whatever the closing price and opening price that NinjaTrader feeds all the indicators on the chart, that's what Bloodhound uses. So Bloodhound is not some magical indicator that can circumvent what price data NinjaTrader feeds. Right? NinjaTrader is the platform. NinjaTrader controls everything, including the price data that's being fed to indicators. Right now, if it's an indicator overlay, then obviously Bloodhound doesn't see that because that's an indicator, right? With Bloodhound, you're seeing it, but Bloodhound is being fed by NinjaTrader the actual candlestick data, the bar data underneath the overlay, right? So make sure you get those two things cleared up about cleared up with NinjaTrader, right? Those are functions of NinjaTrader there. So if you want any more clarity on the matter, then you need to consult with NinjaTrader support, and they can explain the inner detailed workings of the bar type versus the indicator overlay and how that affects all the indicators. So, yeah. All right. There. And let's see here. All right, Thwee's up's next. I remembered your name, Thwee. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. All right. 3 has a simple question here. So he wants to recognize a 3-candle pattern, an up, down, up. And when that pattern is recognized, block signals that may happen on that 3rd candle. Obviously, you can't block signals on the first up, because how do you know if the next bar is going to be a down and the next bar is going to be an up, right? Obviously, you can only detect an up, down, up after it's happened. So you're only blocking signals on the last up bar. So, yeah, all right. So we can handle that. Oh, let's add a new logic template. There. There we go. All right. So we're going to add a bunch of bar direction solvers here. Actually, no, we just need 2. There we go. Need another one. All right. So you'll notice these have a -1 and _1, _2, because we already have a bar direction right here. So I don't want these to interfere right with this one. So I'm just going to leave that underscore in the name there. All right, so let's see here. So this second one, I'm going to swap it there. And let's see here. So we're going to need an AND node. All right. So I'm going to connect that in there. And then, actually, hold on. So this is going to be our first up. Actually, yeah, you know what? Here, I can name these. There we go. There. All right. So because this guy here, right, it's the first one, so it's going to be, you know, two bars back. So we're going to set the start bars a go to 2. Right. I'm going to connect that in. Right. Now the second bar, well, it's going to be 1 bar back. And then, let's see here. Actually, hold on. Yeah, you know what? I was going to make this more complicated than it needs to be. I'll keep it simple here. So I'm going to add another bar direction. Okay. So here's our third, which this is the current bar. So I just plugged that straight in there. And there we go. Up, down, up. Up, down, up. And we have the vice versa as well. Right? So we have down, up, down. Right? So now what we want to do is this AND node. If we invert it, what we have here is right? So whenever you have a long and a short output, this allows signals through, right? But remember, with an AND node, whenever a signal is missing, then an AND node prevents that signal from getting through, right? So, and with an AND node, everything has to line up. All right, so let me uninvert this here. All right, so let's use this as our example here, right? So remember, this is our first up bar, which is, right, that's our first up bar. So when we look at it, all right. Yeah, so you see this short, right? This is for this down bar, right? This short is for this down bar. So that means this long is coming from this up bar, right? This long output is that up bar. Because remember, we use the start bar as a go, too. Right, so that's doing the same thing as the displacement function. Right, so remember, in the previous question, we used the look back so we could use the displacement to shift things forward in time. Right? Well, sometimes, depending on where you place an option, where the functionality is located, sometimes it's called start bars ago, but it's the same thing as displacement. So, it's all a bunch of semantics there for programmers. So yeah, even NinjaTrader, in some of their indicators or some of their functions, they use start bars ago instead of displacement. So, right, so it's start bars ago 2. So that means it took this long output from this up bar and pushed it forward 2 bars, right, onto our right, the third bar in question there, right? And this, right, this is our second down bar. And so I'll take away the start bars a go, right? So look, everything's reversed because remember I hit the swap button there, right? So all the up bars now give us short output, and this down bar gives us a long output. Right. All right, so let's add that start bars a go, like so. Here we go. And now this is really just normal settings here, right? Start bars a go is left at 0 because this is the third bar, right? This is ultimately the third bar. So, right, and so the AND node just says, hey, if everything lines up, if we're getting 3 greens in a row, then bingo, right? We have a long output there. And, right, and so when everything was mismatched, right, there's no signals over here because, this guy has been disagreeing with the other 2 up bar solvers, right, this entire time, right, all throughout all these bars, right? This guy's been disagreeing, and so the AND node because of the AND node you get no output. So now, by extension, if we invert that, right, then what we end up with is now all of these long and short signals allow long signals or short signals through, and where there's an absence, right, then no long signal can occur here, right? So if you want to narrow it down to something like that, where on a up, down, up, you want to prevent only longs, then there you go. You're ready. You're ready to go with that, right? If you want this up, down, up to only prevent shorts, then I think we could just swap this. Yeah, look at that. All right, so it's inverted and it is swapped. So you can see the two icons there, right? And so now this up, down, up prevents short signals. So no short signal can happen here on these two bars, right? That's why we're seeing a long output there, right? And then finally, so this guy here is, we'll just call this your, up, down, up filter. All right, so that's just a filter. So then ultimately, whatever your signal source is, right? So there, right? So whatever your system is, right, it's going to have an AND node, probably at the end. If for some reason this isn't an AND node connected to your result node, maybe it's an OR node connected to the result node, well, you'll have to stick an AND node at the very end of your system that's producing the signals. And so your signals get connected in the AND node, and this filter gets connected into the AND node, right? And there you go. And so now you're blocking, whatever signals, right? Now, to cover all the bases here, if you really wanted to block all signals, long and short, on an up, down, up, then we would need to utilize that long short modifier. Let's connect that in. And with the long short modifier, we're going to use the minimum function again, right? So that minimum function, right, took out that short, and I think back here, let's see, where was it? No, yeah, back here. So I think these were longs and longs, right? But anyways, right, we can see now this will prevent long and short signals there. All right, so your long short modifier, might need to go in between there. There you go. Like so. Yeah. All right, so there's all the different options there. All right, that was Twee's question. So let me see if anybody has any follow-ups. All right, Twee got his answer. So yeah, I'm hoping I'll be over it by the weekend. So yeah, I guess today will tell me if I'm on the tail end or if it wants to hang around for a couple more days. So we'll see. Yeah, the end of today we'll figure that out. All right, that was Paul's description here. All right, let's see what Doc has going on. I think I can hold out for another question here. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Paul was asking, he came in late there. What email? Everything goes to support, gentlemen. All right, so whenever I say email it in, yeah, we only have one email address, and it's support, just to keep it simple, right? Everything goes into support there. So, and we can all see what goes into support. So, yeah. One thing that's handy there, if you're emailing questions in for this workshop, is in the subject line of your email, please put, Bloodhound workshop question, or at least workshop question. If you're not sure if it's Bloodhound or Blackbird, at least put workshop question as the subject of your email. So that helps all of us kind of figure out what your intention is there. All right. So, okay. So, all right. Thank you, Paul. And okay, so we got that one out of the way. All right, back to Doc's question here. Oh, all right. It looks like we have a group of traders in here today. Okay, yeah, thanks, Doc, for trying to expand upon the explanation there. I appreciate that. So good. All right, so yeah, hopefully Paul or Doc, one of you guys can put together a nice screenshot and email that in for next week's workshop question there. Since I am hopefully coming out at the tail end of this cold, my head is still a little slow. So I mean, my speech pretty much says how that I'm slowed down a little bit because of this cold here. So I really don't want to try and struggle doing this live. I would rather see a screenshot and do a little practice run, do a little rehearsal, before the workshop. That way, I don't have to back up and try different approaches, right? I want to, do a little rehearsal first on this one, because this actually is a new question. So congratulations, gentlemen. You have actually posed a new question to me that I haven't had in a very long time. So I don't get too many new questions anymore these days. So this will be an interesting one for me to solve there. I think I kind of got it worked. I got the basics worked out in my head. I know how I'm going to tackle this, but I don't know if it's actually going to work out, right? When you're building stuff, right, you start with the concept. Sometimes your concept works and sometimes it doesn't, and you got to back up, right? And take a different approach. So, yeah. All right. So Paul and Doc, hopefully you guys can get me a screenshot there. Kind of. And if it helps, gentlemen, let me close this. So remember here, Bloodhound comes with a zigzag indicator as well. You don't have to use the swing trend if you don't want to, right? You can use Ninja's zigzag if you want, although I don't recall if Ninja's zigzag is readable. I think it is, but I don't think it's nearly as readable as the swing trend is, right? So actually what's better than the zigzag here is the price action swing from what's it called these days? Futures IO? No, NexusFi. Sorry, NexusFi. Yeah, you can get the price action swing. And I think Ninja's zigzag is basically just a simple knockoff of the price action swing there. But anyways, you can use either one. I don't really like Ninja's zigzag there, right? So there you go. That'll put the swing legs on there for you. to help illustrate the exact details of your two-legged pullback. Sounds like there's a joke in there somewhere. like Sounds like the beginning of an old Western joke or something. All right. Okay. Let's see here. All right, let me continue down. Let's see. Marcus gave me a comment. That's okay. Yeah. Sorry, I read that comment a little too late. All right, I appreciate that. All right, so good. Looks like Doc has emailed that question in. And let's see. I'll see if I can confirm that. Yep, there it is. All right, I got it. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, and let me make sure you got the screenshot in there. Excellent. All right. Well, depending on how things go, I'll read through your email after the workshop, and if I have any follow-up questions, I'll email you back. And we'll get that done next week. All right. Yeah, Jess says get the rest you need. Oh man, I've been sleeping too much. Yeah, this was one of those colds that the symptoms weren't like too bad, but it was an energy drainer. Sometimes colds are just, the symptoms are just really obnoxious. You're tired of blowing your nose all the time. But then some colds are they just drain the life out of you, and you just want to sleep all day. Yeah, and I have been doing that. I am just wanting to get outside. Okay, let's see here. What else we got? Let's see. All right, yeah. So Paul, just to clarify, David did send in a screenshot and an explanation there for me. So you're covered, Paul. Okay. And yeah, all right, yeah. Any zigzag indicator is fine, just so you can point to all the zigs and the zags that you're counting as swing, as leg one, leg two, so on and so forth. So, all right. Well, gentlemen, wow. I actually made it. I made it to the 2-hour mark today. I kind of surprised myself. So, looks like I managed to get through all of the questions in the Q&A window so far. So with that, yeah, I actually am gonna just wrap it up with this here. Let's see here. Liquid echinacea. Oh, and golden seal. Oh God, that stuff tastes horrible. Yeah, I used to take that stuff when I was younger. But yeah, I know. My son uses oregano oil. He was the one who gave it to me. He takes heavy doses of oregano oil, and he got over it. And he's obviously, my son's a lot younger, and he got over it lickety split. So, yeah, I appreciate that. So, yeah, my dad's a health food nut, so I know all about echinacea and golden seal. Yeah, back in the 70s, I learned about that. So, man, dating myself here. All right, gentlemen. Yeah, I'm gonna call it quits for my sake here. So, yeah, and like I said, I do seem to be better. I lasted 2 hours, so I'm pretty sure I'll do a Blackbird workshop tomorrow. All right. So maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe not. We'll see how my cold goes. But otherwise, gentlemen, have a good rest of your day, and definitely have a good weekend. And by the way, after the Fed announcement, it sounds like buy, 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 right? So make sure you're buying with both fists clenched. All right, guys, have a good one. See you next time. Bye bye.